One. Welcome to the Lightforge Podcast. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. We are in the new expansion. Hopefully you guys have been playing. You guys have been having fun. And we got lots to talk about this week.
Yeah, we have a special guest with us today who is the #1 arena player in all of North America in the month of July. He's a frequent guest on the show, and we're so proud of him. He has a weird name, though. His name is Merps, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this must be an extremely handsome, charismatic, and attractive guy to have gotten #1 in the leaderboards.
#1 in the leaderboards at 9.24 or 23, which is apparently a mistake before you correct it, because you like to. It's actually 9.27, but Blizzard messed up the numbers. Anyway, Frost Festival, huge asterisk on the actual number, but relatively still #1. And that number is technically the #1 ever record in North America. Which is still...
I had a little bit of help.
Just, one extra win. But just to give you an idea of how ridiculous, we had Victor on 12 wins from earlier in the year. His record in EU still stands as the overall best record ever. No one in the Frost Festival had beat his record. So that was kind of ridiculous. We'll talk more about that later at the end, because as amazing as it is that our very own Merps is #1 in NA, this is also the week of the KFT launch, where we actually got the card dump on Monday. Then we figured out that there was something called a synergy bonus being added to the arena on Wednesday, and then KFT came out on Thursday. It's a lot of stuff, and so we're gonna try to go through all of it in a more overview kind of way, and we'll dig in where we need to. But we're not going to make this like a 2-hour podcast. It'll maybe be like an hour and a half, because there's just a lot of stuff. But let's try to touch upon a bunch of stuff. Where do you want to start, Merps?
I honestly don't know. And you have planned this out. So let's not ask me a rhetorical question that I can't answer, even though you meant it as a rhetorical question.
I did not mean it as a rhetorical question. I really mean like pick a topic to start at, because we have so many freaking topics to talk about. Okay,
so I actually get to choose. There's no trap here.
There's no trap here. You get to choose.
I really do.
Yeah. You could pick whatever topic you want to talk about. That's relevant.
All right. I want to talk about synergies.
Okay, let's start with synergies. What is synergies, and why are we starting with synergies and not anything about KFT, this new expansion that everyone was hyped about and that launched and that we made a whole tier list for? And I don't know. Why are we starting with synergies? Why is this the most important thing in the arena right now?
All right, so synergies were implemented on when was it? Wednesday, I think, or was it? It was implemented on Wednesday, and it was something that kind of just snuck into the update, right? Snuck into the patch. They were just like, yay, expansion. And by the way, your first 2 picks of your arena draft are now going to have synergy cards. And here, have fun with it.
That's it.
Like, there you go. And then with maybe the subtext of like, yay, synergy, have fun.
No one knows what that means. They didn't say what that means. On a Reddit post later, they're like, oh, we mean like, cars that would go really well if you have the synergies working for you. And then you're like, but are you going to give us the synergy cards to work with that card? And they're like, no. And then you're like, oh, okay. So just the first 2 cards, we're going to get like Blaze Callers. I get it. And so they left it at that, and everyone was a little confused, and people played a little on Wednesday. It's not like the best time to be playing the day before an expansion. And they're like, this is kind of weird. We're seeing a lot of really ridiculous, like not like ridiculous synergy decks, but like the first 2 picks are always synergies, and you don't usually hit them, and they're kind of weird. And then the expansion hit. And what happened when the expansion hit, Merps?
Wow. The end result, there were some frustrated, confused, and unhappy people. We saw when this was implemented, everyone was basically drafting elementals. They were drafting beasts. They were drafting Jade.
These are KFT themes, right? Like we talked about it in our overview of the themes for KFT. It's the elemental, Jade, and Beast and Dragon meta that's coming, right?
That's actually the name of the expansion. We call it Knights, but it's actually called Beasts, Jades, Elementals and
Murlocs?
dragons.
Murlocs. Don't forget the Murlocs and the eggs.
Eggs of the Frozen Throne. Yes. So many eggs. So many Double Sword eggs. Everyone had Double Sword egg. And then it became a joke on stream, right? Whenever they played their Double Sword egg, it's like, oh, that's their first pick.
And it's not just a joke on stream. It's like literally a fact where they obviously picked that as the first pick because you're going to be offered the egg on the first pick like half the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So before we get into the whole community reaction to it, let's start with the reality that this is what we're talking about now. This is our first topic. This is the topic we're going to spend probably the most amount of time on of all of our topics. And it has nothing to do with KFT because Blizzard messed up. In a very, very flat statement that I am very comfortable making, Blizzard messed up. Blizzard did not intend for any of the things that happened after they put this out to have happened. And when they were before they pushed this out, they did not do enough testing because this result could not possibly have been what they intended. There is, like, I don't have, like, the highest amount of confidence in Blizzard's direction in the arena, but there is no way they are that tone deaf that they thought that this particular practical result was desirable. 0% chance.
And the feedback was extraordinarily negative, right? This was not like when they changed Arena from Wild to Standard, and you had, I'm not going to guess percentages, but you had a good number of people on one side saying, yay, this is a good change, and a good number of people saying, no, I like the craziness, I want the wild stuff. The number one post on Reddit for quite a few hours was a post about how the synergies in Arena are terrible and they're ruining Arena. Universally, it was panned as bad.
It started with the word rant, and it got upvoted to 5.6k net upvotes.
Yeah.
When rants get upvoted that high, you're doing something really wrong. And it's about the Arena too, right? Like, how often do Arena stuff hit like 5k upvotes?
Yeah, and this is something that you're absolutely correct. I don't think they tested it a lot or at all, because even if you believe in the idea of synergies, if someone had played this in its current implementation, I don't know how anyone can find it not just competitive. It's fine. You don't have to be the number one player in North America to do this. But you also, if you're looking at it from a fun perspective, it's not fun as well, which everyone agrees with. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating because you're being forced to take a risk, right? If you take the risk and you're like, yeah, this is great. If someone's like holding a gun to your head and is like, dude, you have to take this risk, it's not so great. You feel really bad about it.
Yeah, I'm going to quote from this post. This post is called Rant, the quote-unquote 4 synergy picks changed to Arena is an absolute disaster and should be reverted immediately. Currently, it's 5,619 upvotes, golded. It is by Overlord Lork, and my tweet is quoted on there because I expressed how much I hated it after being forced to draft 3 elemental decks in a row that were Elemental Warrior, Elemental Warlock, and Elemental Priest, I want to say, which are wonderful elemental classes, right? Like, that's what class you would pick if you want to go down the elemental route, because I had no choice, because the first 2 picks said pick elementals or even crappier cards. And remember, these are not like elementals. These are things that trigger your elementals. These are your Tovirs, these are your Blaze Callers. So I had like a double Blaze Caller deck because the other cards were total trash. And then the draft proceeded to not give me like more than 2 other elemental choices. And so I'm like, well, now I just lose. And then I did. And it was like, great. This is Arena now. But this is the best. So he has literally 13 reasons why this change sucks. And you should go read it. It's very well written. The one I like the most is what Merps is talking about. I'm going to quote him. Quoting Overlord Lork. It's like a slap in the face when enablers don't show up. Previously, if I took a first pick Jade Spirit, I'd be accepting the risk myself. It's possible that I get a good Jade deck, and it's possible that I get nothing, but I knew that when I took the card. Now, it's a requirement to pick that type of card. So if I don't get any Jades, or I don't get any Dragons for Bookworm, then I'm just screwed. I get to sit there with a shit deck while I can faintly hear Blizzard yelling, "Are you having fun with your synergies yet?" in the background.
Blizzard tends to enunciate very precisely.
He used all caps for that section. I figured that was the best way to convey all caps in a written
without
post,
shouting,
without actually shouting, because we're in a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't want to break people's eardrums.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Great. So that is. I couldn't have said it better myself. When I was on stream when this post came out, and the entire time I was like, I'm going to make a video right after that. This is worse than Arena Warriors Matters. I tweeted out, it's worse than GVG Curvestone. It's worse than anything that we have seen when it comes to how bad it is for the arena and how fun it is for the arena. And then I got off stream and I found this post already like on the front page. I was like, oh, I'm not making any videos. This post has done it way better than I could have. It's 13 very well written reasons from all sorts of perspectives about how this is just a horrible change, and it is. Like conceptually, it may be not as horrible of a change. Like when I first heard about it, my first reaction was actually, oh, I guess that's okay. You get some like synergy picks, and you get a couple more Murlocs or whatever, so you can build your Murloc deck, or you're fine. But that's not how it happened. What you were offered weren't more Murlocs or more Dragons or more Elementals. You were only offered cards that generally suck unless you then end up hitting your Elementals, your Murlocs or whatever. So to give you an idea of what these cards are, like every class gets an Elemental package and a Murloc package and a Dragon package. Weapon classes get Pirates. Druid and Hunter get Beasts. Mage, Hunter, Paladin gets Secrets. Druid, Rogue, Shaman gets Jade. Warlocks get Demons and Discard. Everyone gets spell synergies except Warrior, who don't get weapon synergies because Blizzard does not care about Warrior. They just don't get spell synergies. You kind of get the point that this is like a very like badly cobbled together set of cards. And so like the common pool, for example, literally consists of something like less than 10 cards that you can possibly be offered in these first two picks, right? So that means every single draft you are seeing these 10 possible cards on your second pick. Your first pick's are rare, it's from a different pool, which has even less than 10 cards. And it's just, you're seeing the same decks come out because Blizzard is forcing you to pick the same decks, because the offering bonus right now, which we'll get into for KFT, is not with KFT. The offering bonus right now in the arena is to Elementals. It's to Murlocs. It's to Beasts or whatever. Like an insane offering bonus. Because you think about the card pool, which is like almost 1,000 cards, and they're saying, here's a card pool of 10. They're always going to show up on your second pick. Here's another card pool of like 6. It's always going to show up on your first pick. Go for it. So that's the meta. Yeah,
that's basically it. This is why when I play these days, and look, I haven't played too many runs, but you see, it's like, what are the kind of decks that I'm facing, right? They are Dragon decks. They are Murloc. I see Murloc decks, legit Murloc decks, because all you have to do, like, one of your first picks is going to have a Murloc thing in it. Like, statistically you should. And then, it's not that crazy to get 2 Murloc things, and then afterwards, you can definitely high roll on Murlocs, right? Mm-hmm. So that is sort of what we're seeing. Like, we should sort of be being exposed to KFT cards. We should be like, oh yeah, man,
there's no KFT cards in there. I mean, there are, but there's like literally like 1 or 2. Because KFT is not a very synergy heavy deck expansion. So this is like the opposite of the KFT meta.
Yeah. I don't know. So this is one of those changes which I don't know why they love putting stuff out either really near like the beginning of an expansion or like during it, right? And they kind of did this like it did a similar thing with 7.1 and then the subsequent change afterwards as well, right, for Ongoro. And the thing I just don't understand is how this implementation made it out. I'm not saying, you have
to... It made it out because no one really tested it. They did a few runs with it, and they're like, hey, it's fine. I had a Murloc deck, I had an Elemental deck. They didn't do like a few hundred runs and be like, oh, I'm always drafting a Murloc deck and an Elemental deck. And they probably didn't do it with KFT cards in it. That's how it made it out. It's because Blizzard... We talked about this before, right? Blizzard's head and its arms are not together. The people who are like deciding arena stuff and the people who are deciding the new cards and the people who are deciding the events, they're not talking to each other in a good way. This made it out because the testing team wasn't testing the actual product that was coming out. If there is a testing team. I assume there's some kind of testing team. You can't just like decide to do this without having at least an internal like, testing thing. Right?
Yeah.
Like you can't. The changes are too big.
Yeah. Look, it is just very frustrating because it's really ruined kind of the mood of the beginning of an expansion, and it's kind of ruined the experience of it, right? And I want players to come back into the arena. I want players to enjoy it as well, and just for Arena to do well, right? And this is a bad time for Arena to get bad publicity, and for people to see is like, oh wow, Arena is not fun.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. You just got a whole bunch of casuals into the arena with Frost Festival, and now you're like, we're gonna make this crap. So either stick here or go back to Constructed. They're gonna go back to Constructed. What did you do all that for?
I don't know. And it seems to be one of those changes in which it doesn't seem like it's that important, because for the big important changes, they sort of brace people for it, right? They brace people for it. They announce it ahead of time. And this was just tossed in. It's like, oh, hey, this is going to happen. And even for other changes, they kind of previewed it a little bit ahead of time. Like when they did the micro changes, Ixar had a post about it beforehand.
Yeah, this was not explained because it was not well thought out. And we can see that it's not well thought out. You can just, like, you go in the arena right now, draft a deck, face decks, right? What are you seeing? You're seeing a lot of eggs, because there's a lot of eggs being offered to you, and you get really crap cards otherwise. And people eventually realize Blaze Caller is more of a downside than egg, especially when there's a lot of buffs going on with the KFT cards. So, like, egg is actually like a low, it's like a hedge, right? It's like, well, at least I'll get some egg triggers, so it won't be that bad of a card. So you're going to get a lot of eggs. And this is going to the practical set, right? Like, assuming you're still playing Arena, and you're not going to let this stop you from actually playing the Arena, take eggs. Like, eggs are okay, because what you need to do in your first two picks, assuming you're not getting legendaries and, like, really good cards, and you're just getting these, like, crap offerings, which happens more than half the time, what you want to do is lower your downside, like, for practical sake. Just assume you don't hit the synergies, because you don't get a bonus to actually hit the synergies in the rest of the deck. That's not how these, like, picks work. You have the same rest of the draft as you did beforehand. You're just forced to pick a high synergy card. So what you want to do is not pick the high upside synergy cards that you may actually pick in the later part of the draft if you had already hit your synergies, which is the cards they're giving you. It's totally backwards. Like, Blizzard does not understand how synergies work at all, in the drafting process at least. Instead, what you want to do is pick very low downside cards. So, like, eggs are good. Why? Because there's a lot of buffs right now, no matter what class you are. So you're going to hit some buffs, and then your egg is not going to be a dead, like, anti-temple card all the time. You want, like, the Tovir Stone Shape or whatever, the 3/5 thing that gets a taunt and a Divine Shield when if you have an elemental bonus, is totally fine. It's a bad card, but it's not going to be as bad as your Blaze Caller. Like, your Blaze Caller, on the tier list, right? We say Blaze Caller is X and Tovir is X. We're assuming you have the average number of these kinds of decks, of these kinds of cards. And when you're picking two of these to start, you're already shifting your, like, risk for the deck so far out of range that instead what you really need to do in the beginning now, more so than you needed to do before these synergy picks in, is to rein in your risk. Because assuming you're a good player, you are now being forced to over-risk in your first two picks than you're normally used to, and more over-risking is bad for your average as in the first two picks at least, as a good Arena player. If in the later picks you want to take more risk because your deck is bad, that's a different story. But you never want to start out with risk, and that's what they force you to do. So, as a good player, what you need to do in the very beginning is to limit your downside as much as absolutely possible.
Yeah, and that's pretty terrible.
It's the exact opposite of what they want you to do. Like, I'm literally trying to draft to prevent Blizzard from doing the thing they're trying to do, because what they're trying to do is screw you. So your job, if you want a consistently high average, is to avoid getting screwed. Because what gets you screwed more is when you have a double Blaze Caller draft and not enough elementals, not when you have a double Tovir deck and no elementals.
Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of what's going on with the synergies right now. I think universally the community does not like it, and I'm not just talking about the devoted Arena community.
Yeah, even
I think
the
it's just
casuals.
Hearthstone. Yeah, the Hearthstone community is very much so against it. We haven't had a response from Blizzard yet, but with all of this negative, sort of backlash, I can't imagine that this in its current form will stay, right? So I think that they'll have to go in one of two directions. Number one, just go back to the way it was, which is easy enough and sort of no harm, no foul. People forget about it in a week or two, or they would have to change it to something which is better. That's really hard to do. I have a few ideas maybe, but it would be more than just like doing a simple 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
you'd have to do a lot more than that.
And the thing with Blizzard is we've consistently seen that they try to stay away from work when it comes to the arena, right?
Which is fine. Which is not.
At the end of the day, their solution to class balance was micro adjustments, which is like, we're going to do no work, right? Like, our actual people who are supposed to know how to balance games, we're going to do no work. We're going to let an algorithm take over and automatically adjust cards up and down, right? Like, by little amounts, based on purely like on win rates of people, right? It's a very like brute force solution to the problem, which again, right? Like, we don't like it, but it's not like totally destroying arena the way this is. This is actually destroying the arena meta.
Yeah. So if I were a betting man, I would think that we'd probably have the synergy thing for a little while longer, and Blizzard would patch it out, right? Because in order to fix something like this, I would imagine, if you want to keep synergies, but you don't want this in its current state, you need to basically have a lot more complexity in synergies, right? It's not just first 2 cards are these list of synergy cards, and let's sort of like throw these at the player. It would have to be, you'd have to do first 2 picks are this, and also whatever you pick has a certain percentage, it affects the rest of your draft, right? Or you shift these to the later part of your draft, perhaps your earlier draft increases the chances of you getting something so you can build upon it, right? So if you say I draft a lot a lot of Murlocs through picks like 1 through 20, I'm just like, I know at pick 30 there's a high chance that Murloc is waiting for me, so that's worth it, right?
Yep.
I don't know, so those would be some ideas I would have, but once again, more complicated, a lot more work. And how do you explain this to just new players?
You can't. That's one of the issues, right? The burden of knowledge is so high right now. There's nothing in-game telling you about the first 2 picks being different than the rest of the picks. There's nothing, like, if I get 2 Blaze Callers in the beginning, maybe I'm assuming that I'm going to be offered more Elementals. That's a decent assumption, right? If Blizzard just throws you 2 Blaze Callers every draft, but then you just don't get the Elementals. Like, what are you... It's a very bad situation if you don't know the arena, you don't research it the way we do, and when you do research it, you realize how awful it is. And you don't have to do any of that to realize how awful it is. You just have to play it a few times. But yeah, I agree with your solutions. It shows a fundamental, just not knowing how drafting works by Blizzard, which is, again, not terribly far off from what you would expect, given they're tone deaf of how other changes have been made so far. What you want to do in the very beginning, if you want to push synergies into the arena, right? What you want to do in the beginning is to make low downside cards that have a tribal label or that fits something else, right? Like a card with good stats that does something else that you could then synergize with. So your 2/3 Murloc that gives +1/+1 to other Murlocs, great, right? Volatile Elemental is fine. Like, anything with a beast tag for a druid or a hunter is fine. You start your draft with 2 beasts as a druid, you're going to go down a beast path, right? Like, that's going to happen. And then you can naturally find those things, and then you will build your deck in a normal way. And if you don't, you're still not screwed. If you want to do it the other way, which is to start off with your Blaze Callers, what you need to do is stick those at the very end. So your player already knows what deck they have, and then they can pick the right one. You can't flip it. Like, this is the exact opposite, even if you thought adding synergy to the arena was a good idea. Okay. All right. I want to stop talking about this because this is just, we talked too much about it. It's not about KFT, and it's sad that it's like the defining part of this meta right now. But just so you know, everything that we had talked about how KFT was going to be is like half wrong. Because, at least half wrong, because this is not the meta that Blizzard told us we were getting. These are not the offering rates that we're getting. We'll get into that next. And this synergy thing is throwing everything off in a way that's very not KFT. It's actually the opposite of KFT, so it has the reverse effect. Like, Arena's in a horrible, horrible state right now. Literally the worst state I have ever seen Arena. And you remember back in Karazhan when there was a Firelance Portal oppression thing with Faceless Summoner and then Firelance Portal? It took him like 2 weeks or like 4 days after Crip complained about it to get rid of Faceless Summoner. And I'm hoping, like, the problem right now though is I don't know when Crip is going to actually complain about this because he's mostly playing Constructed in the early going of any launch of an expansion. But he seems to be able to get Blizzard's attention because of his reach. So hopefully Crip will pick up on the Reddit post and talk about it. And if he's played some Arena, he's gotta be feeling the same thing. If he's played a number of Arena runs. Okay, so let's talk about the next thing, which is the KFT offering bonus. We expected it to be 100% because Blizzard told us in 7.1 rules that everything was going to be 100%. For all the new expansions, and unless they tell us otherwise, and they did not tell us otherwise, so we thought it was going to be 100%. It wasn't an assumption. It was actually the rules that Blizzard had told us. And it's not 100%. And we don't know what it is. And no one knows what it is.
No, we don't. As of right now, there seems to be an offering bonus, right?
Mm-hmm. It's not like KFT cards does have an offering bonus. You do see them more often than other cards.
Right. But if you just look at the available statistics, it doesn't it's not 100%. And I can't really figure it out what it is.
I mean, you can't just intuit it. You gotta.
Yeah. So once again, information that Blizzard has put out that is not what they say it is. And I'd love to say it was the first time that something like this has happened, but this is just par for the course.
Every time.
It's just every time.
It's not even like sometimes. It's like more than most of the time.
Which I will say, look, we take this game pretty serious. And some people might say a little bit too seriously. And
we take it most seriously possible.
Right. Look, I want to be good at this game, right? Like, I want to learn the meta. I want to basically learn all the things I can learn about the game. You know, we try to put out an educational podcast. We try to put on an educational stream. In order to do that, I need to have knowledge available to me that I can take in. And games that are competitive should have this information available. And when
you're
games
saying that in order to play a competitive game, you should have a rule book? Or crazy. Like for very basic things, like what cards you're going to be putting in your deck? Like maybe people should know what cards they can put in their deck in order to play the game.
No, but every single card is offered, right?
Yeah, totally. Except like these 4 here and those 8 there, and these 2 have lowered offering rates. And the whole old set has a 50%. I can't. Like, imagine you're trying to get into the arena right now and you just don't know any of the rules, but you like actually want to take it seriously, and then you find out all this stuff. You're just like, what are the designers doing? Like, it's so... I don't even know how we got to this point, right? Where it's just like a stack of really random rules that they're just sticking with. But anyway, I think the point is that if you're expecting KFT bonus to be plus 100% the way we had been, and everybody who really cares about the arena and was seeking out information found that same information, it's false. It's not 200%. It's maybe 150%. I think like that's a good like mental estimate to use until we get more information, if we get more information. But it feels like 150%. I don't know, right? Like at this point, it could even be a bug, and they could be offering certain cards more than other cards, right? Like that would not be past me either, because you know what? This is the next point. There are some KFT cards that aren't even in the arena at all.
Yeah, according to publicly available information, there are cards that basically HS Replay just has not seen, right? And HS Replay has a decent sample size, and if they do not see some of these cards at all, and some of these cards, as you'll see, are pretty good cards, right? Like average, above average cards, it means that they are not in the
one
arena.
Is very good.
One is very good.
We talked about one for a long time and about how broken it may be.
Right. So ADWCTA, you want to go through this list?
So first, the one I really want to talk about, and the one that's actually meta defining in the sense that its absence is defining the meta in a different way than we had expected. And this gets more personal for us because I'm out there like making like a algorithm to determine this stuff, and we need assumptions for new cards, and we have board assumptions, and we have all this technical stuff going in about what's happening in the arena. And so it's very clear to us when things are just off. And so immediately we're like, oh, well, our assumptions are now all off, and they're off because Blizzard doesn't have this card in the game, and it's a very important card that we actually expect to see a lot because it's neutral, which means every deck has an offering bonus, which means you're gonna, see it like at least once every other draft. And it is a Hildnir Frostrider, 3 mana 4/4.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
3 mana 4/4, Battlecry, freeze your other minions. So it's an overstated on-curve thing, has a huge impact on what cards are good on curve and what cards are less good on curve, and it's just not in the arena at all. No decks have it.
Yeah. And so this is a card which we have rated as quite good, right?
127.
Yeah, this is quite good. And you should see it in the arena. It is not something like a treachery, right? In which you're just like, oh, okay, I can understand if perhaps we don't see too many of these. And it's not just we don't see too many of these. We just haven't seen this. HS Replay has not seen this card.
It's not draftable.
Yeah. So...
like, there's literally like 10 neutral common cards above it on the tier list. Right. Like, it's very high.
You should definitely see this card. People need 3-drops, right? It's not like a huge, big card that is unplayable. It's not a small, useless card.
Mm-hmm.
This is a card that is perfect for the meta, and you don't see it. So,
So I'm going to go with one other one that's perfect for the meta. And I mean not the KFT meta we expected to see, but the current meta of the Eggs and the Blaze Callers. It's actually perfect for this meta. It would be nice if we saw this card. We're supposed to see this card. It's definitely not like so OP or so bad that Blizzard would take it away on purpose. It's just a bug that this is not in the arena. Grave Shambler, another common neutral card. 4 mana 4/4 elemental. It's one of the only elementals they added into the neutral elementals they added into the game, and with an offering bonus, and it's not in. And they're pushing the synergies, and they keep giving you elementals and forcing you down elemental drafts. Anyway, the ability says whenever your weapon is destroyed, gain +1/+1, which is not a terribly useful ability, but still, it's a 4 mana 4/4 elemental. Like, it will see play. 0 times drafted.
Yeah, look, we should definitely see this card as well. So there's no reason for it. And it's weird. I don't understand why these cards are not appearing, right? It's not like their tier isn't appearing. It's just these cards aren't appearing. And finally, we're pretty sure that one other card is not appearing as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the Rogue Weapon. So that's kind of annoying because weapons are pretty good. It is their Rogue Rare Weapon, Shadowblade. 3 mana, 3/2 weapon with Battlecry. Your hero is immune this turn. Good weapon. You will happily draft this as a rogue. We have seen Rallying Blade as well as Eaglehorn Bow do work. This is sort of a deadly poison, just kind of wrapped up into one as well. It's just not there. HS Replay has not seen this card, and along with Grave Shambler and Hildnir Frostrider, these are the 3 cards that we're very, very sure is not in the arena right now. And there have been other cards that are thrown around, but we're very, very sure that these 3 cards are not in the arena.
Yep. I mean, I don't know. We wanted to give you this information because the information is not like exactly available anywhere that's easy to find. Taro put it together and put it on a post on Reddit, but he included a whole bunch of other cards, some of which are actually like being offered, but are just like either epics or like legendaries or whatever, so that HS Replay wasn't picking up enough data on it, and so that post didn't get upvoted to 5.6k upvotes, and I don't know how many people saw that, but these 3 at least are actually just not in the arena, and they should be everywhere in the arena.
Right.
So at the very least, we're 100% sure that these 3 are not in the game right now. And of course they should be, because this is the arena. So here's what Blizzard's done so far in KFT. They have taken the new KFT thing they told us was 100% plus 100% offering bonus, reduced it by some percentage. I don't know if we definitely don't know. I don't know if they know, but it's not to 100%. They've randomly taken a couple cards out for no good reason. Some of them are decent or useful to the arena meta. And then they added this synergy thing that absolutely defines a meta. And the synergy thing is something that is pretty much the opposite of what KFT stands for. Because KFT is these cards go in almost any deck and are useful, right? KFT is in many ways the perfect arena expansion. So that's what's happened in the last week. We've been gone for a week. And between the card dump and this is where the arena stands right now. We played a lot of arena in the last couple days since the expansions come out. And the meta really is like, expect your opponent to have an egg. You know, we thought it was like, oh, Bone Mare, that's who you need to play around. And you do need to play around Bone Mare still. But as much, if not more than Bone Mare, you need to play around like eggs. And if your opponent ever plays an elemental, just like expect a Blaze Caller afterwards, right? And the following legendaries are everywhere. Kazakis and Medivh. Because Medivh is one of the synergy ones that every class besides Warrior gets. And it's quite good. Synergy or no synergy. Because spells, everyone gets in the arena. So you see a lot of Medivhs. And they're game winning, right? And Kazakis too, of course. For Mage, Warlock, and Priest. So that's our like wrap up of the meta that we're seeing right now in the arena. Like if you watched our preview videos, if you watched that whole 6-hour thing, if you're looking at our tier list, it's like halfway there. Like the stuff that we've changed is having like a 50% effect the way it should. Because Blizzard is, okay. You want to move on to the next topic of the actual tier list?
Sure. Our tier list has been updated. Yay!
Major overhaul in the tier list. It's been updated. It will get updated again next Sunday. We have scheduled changes to be made based on... We're hoping by then Blizzard actually fixes the meta. So one thing that people have always asked is, does the first 2 picks synergy bonus actually affect the tier list? And the answer is no, except for things like Hungry Crab that affect your opponent's deck, because they're the first 2 picks. So you will already have made those picks, and then the rest of your draft, you know how to adjust, right? It's not like they're the last 2 picks, in which case, yes, it would affect the entire tier list. So I think that in itself is a pretty good indication that Blizzard screwed up. That they made this massive change that changed the entire arena, and the tier list is it's correctly not affected.
Right.
But yeah, that aside, we made some changes to adjust to what you're expected to see on the board. All the new buffs coming in, all the new cards are valued, all that good stuff. And the top cards are what we thought we were going to see. There weren't too many like good cards that were new that came in the card dump that we didn't already talk about. So you have your Bone Mare at a 152, which is 1 point higher than Primordial Drake. It's an insane card. It wins you games. You have your Bone Drake, which is the dragon that gives you other random dragons at 128, which is again a very good card. And then you have a bunch of the other cards we thought were good, we valued accordingly, right? Corpse Raiser, Subboard Valkyrie, Cobalt Scalebane, Death Speaker are all valued somewhere between a 110 and a 125, and they're all like basically buffing the board. I think the Hildnir Frost Rider is the one that's not in the meta, so we valued it at 127, but it doesn't matter. The ones that actually matter that we haven't really quite seen before, I guess I want to talk about 3 of the neutral cards, just so you guys know a little bit, but they're kind of interesting. Merps, why don't you start us off with Acheris Veteran?
Acheris Veteran. This is a card that, because it's small, I guess I kind of didn't think about it a lot. But
well, it's part of the card dump. We didn't know it beforehand.
Yeah. So Acheris Veteran is a 1-mana 2/1 minion with Battle Cry. Give a friendly minion +1 attack, right? and it is a 105 on the tier list. And it just kind of goes with your theme, right? Of like sort of buffing the board, reward the board. And this is a card that is meta defining in a very small way, but I see this all the time, and I'm always well aware of a 1 damage ping that leaves a body now, like because that's how you view it, right? And all classes now have a ping, which is really
it's not really a ping. It's like you had Direwolf Alpha, right? Like it's like a similar kind of thing as that.
An extra damage.
Yeah,
like if something
like very frequent extra damage.
Right. For example, if there's a 3/3 on their side, I can't feel comfortable dropping a 5/4. Right. I have to assume there's a pretty freaking high chance that it's going to die, and then they'll be left with like a 2/1 and perhaps a 3-drop, and I have to be prepared for that eventuality, which is very different from before, because the chances of a ping or a buff was obviously not as high, or those cards were attached to something that was not great, right? Like a Stone Tusk Boar, for example.
I mean, Atros Veteran ended up being rated a 105, which makes it, of the neutral common / rares, the 3rd best one, below Glacial Shard and Mistress of Mixtures. So you see it in a lot of places, especially in the 2-drop Apocalypse, which, by the way, was one of our KFT themes, which means it didn't happen as hardcore along with all the other KFT themes, because the offering bonus isn't what we expected, and there's this weird other thing going on. But still, you're seeing less 2-drops, but it's not like as bad as we thought it was going to be, purely because the offering bonus wasn't there. If the offering bonus were there, there's only like 2 playable 2-drops, one of which is not very good, and this is the only playable 1-drop. So it would have been really bad. But because it's still lower, you see people trying to fill in, like make up for their lack of a 2 curve by picking some 1s, which makes sense. And that's why Atros Veteran actually gets picked. You see it everywhere nowadays. Like it's very meta in the meta. So I just wanted to bring that into your attention, because we haven't talked about the card before, because it was in the card dump, and it is very important to what's going on in the arena right now. The next one I will talk about is Keening Banshee, which again part of the card dump. 4 mana 5/5. Whenever you play a card, remove the top 3 cards of your deck. So whenever you play a card, which means it's not a Fel Reaver, you get to control. You're not removing that many cards, and it's a 4 mana 5/5, which means it's overcurved. And overcurved cards are great in the arena. It's a 129. Together with that Hildnir Frostrider, which is the 3 mana 4/4, there's this new kind of like power creep-ish in like the mid curve that really like changes the board state on the board, which is interesting, because you're in a meta now that really rewards you for having the board. So these are very key pieces in the meta. They should be aware. You should like kind of anticipate them coming out. You don't anticipate Hildnir Frostrider coming out because they're not in the arena, but when they eventually get added to the arena, which I'm sure they will at some point, these are things to watch out for when you play on an empty board, for example, that this is definitely a possibility that your opponent can play.
Yeah. So that's one of those cards as well where we played with Keening Banshee, and like it just looks really bad when the cards are, it's like burn. But I don't think we ever reach fatigue.
No.
No. So those cards like really don't matter, and having the 1 extra attack is really good, because we say this a lot. There are times when it doesn't matter, but then the times that it does matter, that extra stat is so good. I would gladly pay for it. And the cards you burn, just pretend they're at the bottom of your deck. It doesn't matter if they're at the bottom or at the top. It just looks bad. But forget about it. Be the emotionless husk of an infinite player that ADWCTA is. All right?
Okay. So speaking of being an emotionless husk, that is, we're going to stop there with our cards. There's obviously more cards in the card dump. This is not like a total card review stream. We'll get more into it in future podcast episodes, but these are the important ones you want to watch out for that's currently like in the meta and you actually need to like do something about. There's also, like, we knew about Saronite Chain Gang, 4 mana 2/3 taunt, Battlecry, summon another copy of it. We knew about, in the card dump was Venomancer, 5 mana 2/5 poisonous. That's an interesting new card, also above a 100. Grim Necromancer, which I think was probably the surprise of the ratings when we plugged it into our algorithm, and this is a very normal card, so the algorithm is just like right, or it's like wrong about everything, right? Like it's one or the other. So it is a 4 mana 2/4 summon 2 1/1 skeletons, which if you just asked me normally, I would say, well, it's not a very good card. I would compare it to like Razorfen Hunter. But it turns out those 1/1s are actually quite useful and it actually does a lot. And then we played a bunch with it so far. And it has done, like, it's held up its own, right? Like, as a 4-drop.
Yeah. It's been very surprising. I remember the first time I saw this card and we were sort of, rating the card. I was like, oh, this is terrible. And then over the span of a few minutes, I was like, oh, it's actually, like, not as terrible as I thought it was, to be like, actually, wait, this is good, as in, it's totally acceptable. And as we have seen when we've played it, when opponents play against us, it's really annoying. Right?
It's too many things to try to clear off.
Right. And when we play it, we're very happy because of the options that we have, because of the security that you have.
The number of times I want to play this on turn 6 is staggeringly high.
Right.
Because you set up your Bone Mare.
Yeah, it's a decent enough card on its own, and in a meta where you are relying on buffs, it is really, really good for giving you a much higher chance of having something when it comes back to your turn. Also, the stats are just like very decent, right? The 2/4 is just good enough. 1/1s are always good, as we have seen with like the annoying pounding 1/1s that they can generate. So yeah, it's one of those cards that just works.
Yep, it's rated the same as a 5/4 do nothing card right now. And that's something we thought we'd point out. Like, don't avoid that card if you're looking at it as like Dragon League Mechanic 2.0. It's quite a lot better than that. Okay. One more thing I want to talk about for like practical purposes of how to play in this meta. Like, we complain a lot before about how the meta is horrible, but here's the thing with us. We're going to play every meta. We are arena players. It doesn't matter how awful the meta is. We're not going to switch to another game. We're not going to start playing Constructed or Brawl or whatever. We're just going to play the arena. And so we are playing the arena, and if you're like us, or you don't have the complaints we have about the meta, I know there are at least a few people that I know that are like, I don't really mind the synergy things too much. They'll just make it better eventually. And they can, but if you're still playing here, here's the additional like checklist, like your mental checklist. I'm going to kind of run down how you play around things. It's very quick hitting, and it's going to make you adjust to the meta much quicker. Which I know is one of the reasons why you guys are listening to this podcast, not for the whole like synergy rant, but the synergy rant is the most important thing in this meta right now, because that's like, this is going to affect your win rate a lot less than understanding what synergies are doing to the meta,
It's really a shame, right? We should be talking about the expansion and what, for good or for bad, right? Like, the expansion is very fun, or the expansion sucks because these cards are too OP. But we're talking about something that was just kind of an add-on to an update, an add-on to a patch, and really took away from the expansion in terms of attention, and also took away from it in terms of the cards that are supposed to be offered, the cards that are supposed to be featured.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And I'll get to this list. Before I leave the topic of the tier list for good, a lot of people, me and Merps included, but like to spend a lot of time to get this ready. We had a really significant upgrade into our back end for this that had to get done, and it just took like huge shout outs to our behind the scenes developers, and also to Alter Slayer, who did the amazing art, the little Dark Knight icon that makes the class cards show up, and the icy thing on the bottom that shows you it. I think this is like the best so far of all, because we do this every single expansion. Like, she does this every expansion. She creates the little like the border on the card for the new expansion cards, and this one is my favorite so far. Okay, so that's and if you guys are wondering what the Lightforge tier list is, it's at thelightforge.com. It's our arena tier list. I would normally pimp it a bit harder, and it's because especially because it shares the name as this podcast, but it's not like 100% accurate right now because the meta's not what we thought the meta was. It's not what Blizzard told us it was. So until we get this offering bonus right, it's all kind of a little bit off. And we're looking to have a pretty big update on Sunday. Like, it's not a lot off. It's like within probably like 3-4 points, but still, it's kind of important, at least to us. So it's at the lightforge.com. By Sunday, if Blizzard hasn't said anything, we're just gonna go with whatever the stats say the new offering bonus is, and we're gonna push out some other updates too. So it's all coming. Stay tuned. It's gonna be the back end in this is pretty damn sophisticated right now at this point. And I'll spend some time later on in the month talking about it as well. But for now, okay. The play around list. Priest. Do not hit face with 2/3s. Don't do it. They have a card. It's called Happy Ghoul. It's a neutral card, so they don't have an offering bonus to it. But it's basically a 2-mana 3/3 if they heal their face.
Right. And you're talking about like the turn 2 play,
yes.
Right? Like, yeah, look, if it's turn 8 and you're just like, I remember ADWCTA said, don't hit the face with a 2/3. No. Just that's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, but on turn 2, you play a 2, your opponent doesn't do anything. Do not hit his face with the 2/3. If you have a 3/2 and you hit his face and he heals his face and plays a 3/3, that's not that bad. That means his turn 2 or his turn 3 traded with your turn 2. It's fine. But if you have a 2/3, not only will you get a 3/3 out for only 2 mana, but he will eat your 2/3. It's like a game-losing situation with Priest. Because then he can heal back up, he can buff it, he can do crazy things with it.
Right. Specifically, the scenario we're talking about is Priest is player 1, passes turn 1. It's coming to you. You have 2/2 drops. You coin out the 2/3, which you should, right? If you want to temple out, and then sort of like it plays out that way. Or is it not the way?
Yeah, it could go either way. I think I don't think it's like narrow to just you have the coin. You don't need to have the coin. You could be going first because you don't want that into his turn 3. Like if he spends turn 3 healing himself and playing it, that's also not like ideal. But it's really bad the way when you describe it, right? Like when you coin out the 2/3, and then it's his turn 2. Okay. So that's one thing for Priest. The other thing for Priest is Embrace Darkness as a card. It is 6 mana. The target a minion, steal it at the beginning of the next turn. So basically don't put one giant minion on the board on turn 6 to an empty board. If your opponent already has something on the board, that's fine, because then you eat that, and then your opponent still gets a good deal, but it's not catastrophic. If you already have if you're like so ahead on the board that you already have like a 4-drop on the board and then you play a 6-drop, it's again not the end of the world, right? Like you can still keep tempoing out even if your opponent steals it, but you don't want to do it on an empty board, and you don't want to do it on a losing. You don't want to do it on an empty board. Is basically what I'm getting at. Okay, next, Shaman. There's a positioning thing now for Shaman. And the positioning thing for Shaman is Avalanche, which is a good card. Where do we end up rating Avalanche? So, okay, I guess I'll put some tier scores on these cards for Priest. Happy Ghoul is a 121 for Priest, so that's why it's going to get picked a lot. Embrace Darkness is a... sorry, not Embrace Darkness. Yeah, wait. Yes, Embrace Darkness. Oh, it's an epic card. Embrace Darkness is an epic card, but it's a 133. This Avalanche card for Shaman is a 120. So these are all cards that you will draft a lot. And the Avalanche card is a 4-mana card, and it says freeze a minion and deal 3 damage to adjacent ones. So you have to position now with kind of that in mind. It's like a weird version of a betrayal. But whenever you have 3 cards, like if you have 2 cards on the board, it doesn't matter, because he'll just freeze whichever one he wants and it'll deal 3 damage to the other one. But if you have 3 cards, now you need to figure out which one you would prefer to get frozen and which ones you would prefer to get 3 damage dealt. Which has never been a consideration for Shaman before, so positioning creeping up into the game. Merps, are you okay? You're gesturing a lot.
I'm thinking about the Happy Ghoul thing.
Have you come to a conclusion on it?
I've come to a conclusion. It's mostly applicable when you play a 1-drop.
Not a 2-drop.
As you're player one.
I see.
I had to really. It's like sometimes you just really need to count on your fingers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I need to move like the chess pieces, and by chess pieces I mean
that's literally what our algorithm does all the time. It just counts on its own digital fingers.
Except this chess involves 1 minion on each side and only 2 turns. So I have created an algorithm in my head to calculate this as well. And I've concluded that it is most applicable when you're going first.
Perfect.
And you have a 1-drop. You're welcome.
Number 1 NA, guys. Number 1 NA.
Got him.
Okay, so that's Shaman. Warlock has an additional consideration, which is just to play around Defile. Don't ladder up your minions 1, 2, 3 when it comes to health. Pretty simple, but something to keep in mind. And then the big one, and this is the one that I really want to focus on, is Druid is a completely different animal now. Like, they just have a whole bunch of random taunts, and they have a whole bunch of snails, and like, just things are weird with Druid right now. They're good, but they're weird, which means you see them actually a lot more frequently than you used to. They have a pretty high average win rate according to Arena HS these days compared to where they had like a bad win rate before. And so here's how you play around Druid now. This is completely different than how you used to play around Druid, which is you generally didn't. Step 1, save your 2 damage removals for snails. They have 2 common or rare like cards, one of which is a spell that creates snails. Snails are poisonous. Oh, sorry, they create poisonous spiders. Whatever, I'm calling them snails. They're 2 mana 1/2s that are poisonous. So save them for that because they will have that. Like, if you have to burn them, like burn your 2 damage removals, but like try to save them as much as possible because the snails are coming. 2, don't be afraid to have more attack on the board, especially 5 or more attack, because Druids have a lot of ways to get a 1/5 taunt now, or even higher with the Crypt Lord. So like having like overkill attack on the board is fine for Druid, if you're facing a Druid, just because they have a lot of things with low attack and high health right now. Don't be shy about doing that the way you may hold back otherwise. 3. If you get to the end game and it's 10 mana, watch out for the Firelands Portal of Doom. Just like know that it's probably coming, and if at any point you give a good like 5 damage target and they don't take it, you're fine.
Are you fine?
Yeah, if they don't take it, that means they don't have the card. That's why you're fine.
Oh, okay. No, I heard that differently.
Oh,
it's
no.
Like, if you make it to turn 10, I was like, I don't know about this. I'm like, it's like, and if you don't give them, I was like, I think they could just hit that on anything.
Yeah.
And they would still be okay.
Exactly. So it's nothing really to play around so much as like earlier in the game, you may think about maybe I should push face more, right? Because that card does heal for 5, but that's all it heals for. So maybe that's the way to do it. Or maybe if you have like 3 card advantage and you're like, oh, I don't need cards, maybe you still do need cards if that's your end game against a Druid.
Yeah.
So those are things to watch out for Druid. And the one last thing that I want to talk about is something against a lot of classes. So normally, if you're facing a class without pings, you don't really care, and you want to leave things with 1 health on the board, and that's totally fine. Like you can get Elven Archer or whatever, but generally you're okay, right?
Yeah.
This has changed somewhat now because of the new cards that are in the meta. So Paladin and Priest is still the same. They're both 2 very powerful classes, so thank God that they have this one weakness still, which is if you're facing them, leave stuff at 1 health, you're generally fine, right? Paladins have a delayed 1 attack thing, which is kind of annoying, but you can maybe get rid of it, especially if you have a hero power also that deals 1 damage. But otherwise, they have no real way to deal 1 damage to you. And Priest has 1 card now that deals 1 damage. That is a really bad card. Well, not really bad, but like pretty bad. Spirit Lash, Lifesteal deal 1 damage to all minions. It's not even bad so much as it's still just 1 card, right? And with a questionable offering bonus, and like, it's okay. The other cards the other 2 classes are Shaman and Hunter. You have to play around them a little bit, but generally it's okay to play into it. Because Shaman has deal 1 damage on like Earth Shock, which is kind of a waste if you just want to deal 1 damage, and Frost Shock, which is the same thing, right? Kind of a waste. And then they have, of course, Maelstrom Portal, which is a 157, right? Which is great, but still only 1 card. Only 1 card. and that's it. Nothing else is dealing 1 damage, right? Fork Lightning at least deals 2. They have Stormforge Axis to deal whatever, but you're kind of safe-ish. So these are what I call sort of classes, right? Shaman and Hunter. Like, leaving something at 1 health is pretty safe. And Hunter, of course, has Unleash the Hounds, which is great, but very little after that.
Yeah.
Unleash the Hounds, by the way, 161 now on the tier list.
Ooh.
It's that good, especially with the boards getting so big these days.
Yeah, look, it's always been a great card, and Unleash is also a very meta-dependent card, right? And the meta is quite good for it right now.
This is what I mean, and it's not actually that good right now because we're only halfway into the KFT meta because of the weird things we were talking about earlier, but like, this is what the algorithm does. It figures out what board states are likely, it figures out everything, and then it tells you what's happening. Which is especially good for cards like Unleash the Hounds or Callmaster or whatever. Okay, next is the not really classes, where these are classes that don't have a hero power ping, but you're really not safe putting stuff at 1 health on there. Like, you could, they don't have a hero power that you're forcing them to have a card, but it's not like, it's not safe at all, right? Like, do it if you normally would, but don't put too much extra value on keeping something with 1 health on the board. And that is Warrior and Warlock. It is Warrior because Warrior has this new weapon now, Blood Razor, which deals 1 damage to all minions twice, right? On its battle cry and on the death rattle. And Warlock now has not only Defile, which of course deals 1 damage, and then it chains up. So you've also given Defile something to chain up on top of like just having a good removal for your opponent that can remove it. But also has Despicable Dreadlord, which is a 5 mana 4/5 that at the end of turn deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. So like, when you add all these kind of together, the Warlocks and Warriors are really able to deal with 1 health minions a lot better than they used to. So that's your play around list for KFT for entering the meta. You will be a lot better prepared keeping these things in mind. And otherwise, like we said before, right? KFT is not it changes the meta on the buff side a lot. But everything else, they're just like good and usable cards in almost any archetype.
Yeah. I agree. And it's kind of a shame that that is not sort of the topic that we were focusing on this week.
It would be so good if it were.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can focus on it next week.
Hopefully. We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, now we've come to finishing off the 2 topics of 1, what the heck is the synergy thing? And 2, how's KFC actually looking aside from the synergy thing?
KFT. Are you hungry?
I am. I'm reverting. I didn't have dinner yet.
Wow. We thought it was over with, you know, the KFC meta or your KFC meta, you know, but apparently not. It's okay. It's okay. The relapse happened, and we're just gonna power through. All right.
Okay. So the question from the GOAT for this week, and question from the GOAT, as always, is brought to you by our patrons. Patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you guys again for all of your support. And today it's actually going to be for me. And my question is, because you are now the #1 arena player in NA, which very few people can actually say, like, this is like literally the #1. We know before, for people not up on the Grinning Goat memes, Merps is numero uno since like a year and a half ago when Mike Dene, oh, I know how to say his name now. When Mike Dene, a Blizzard developer who does arena stuff, who, gave the little information that we do have on the synergy meta, actually. He was in Hafu's stream and said, like, Hafu was the best arena player that he knew that had a name, right? And Merps was the #1 at that time for whatever data set he was looking at. But that's not of all players. That's of all players that this one developer knew about, right? They knew that they were streamers. Now Merps can actually claim numero uno as literally the best record in NA, which I know. I think Crip is Crip the only streamer besides Victor that has done that? Or I guess Victor didn't even do it in NA. I think Crip is the only streamer that's done that in NA. I think it's always been held.
Streamers.
Yeah, in terms of streamers, he's been the only one that's had #1, and he's done it twice. But now we can add Merps as a streamer to this list, as well as the highest record. So my question to you after setting all this up is, how did you end up becoming the true numero uno last month? Tell us the story of how Merps finally realized his destiny as numero uno, the true numero uno of Arena in North America.
You know, if we're talking real life here, if my 31 years has just been for me to claim the #1 spot on a Wizard Poker card game for 1 month before not even defending my title, then my life might be kind of sad. But let's not focus on that, and let's just focus on your question.
I feel like you just listed a bunch of facts and then said, my life is sad.
Yeah. Not important. That's for my therapist to figure out many years from now. Not now. But okay, so I guess, look, the leaderboard is something in which, as you know, we can't go for every single month, right? Mm-hmm. And we kind of looked at the opportunity we've had, and we're like, all right, we haven't done this in quite a while. You did it in February, right?
Numero nuevo.
Okay, it doesn't always have to be in Spanish.
Fine. Number 9.
Number 9, and I got number 15.
Number 11, tied for number 11. You can give yourself a little credit there.
Right, sure. Tied for number 11 in March, right?
And I think the interesting part is, to the second decimal point, we had the same average according to Blizzard, which of course was not our real averages, because Blizzard does weird things with their data before. Like, how hard is it to average your runs, right? Like, I don't know, but Blizzard's always a little off. But our record shown by Blizzard is actually literally the same for those 2 months.
Yeah. So anyways, we got some pretty good results, right? You can't be disappointed in that. And then we had a long time in which we were busy, or we're just like, man, the grind is real, right?
I normally play like 12 arena runs a month, 12 to 15. Unless an expansion is launching, then I play like maybe like 20 to 30.
Right. And for me, I know that even though I stream more than you, if I commit to a run, that's about a month when I don't play about half of the classes, right? I always have to be try-harding. I always have to be on, and it takes a lot of time away, and it's just not a very fun month, right?
Yep.
But we knew that we hadn't done this in a long time, and we call ourselves pretty good players, and we do have to back it up at some point. So this is right before an expansion. It's a good time, because when expansion comes out, we'll be working with expansion. So, one of us had to do it. I drew the short straw.
Hey, I was doing algorithm stuff the whole month. Right? I could not do it.
Exactly. You were busy, so I decided to do it. And look, we did sort of we looked at the Frost Festival, and we're like, okay, well, they're giving out these wins. We might as well, sort of take advantage of this, right? There is an event going on. Let's just play our runs during this time. And it's not like
you played what? I would say like 2/3 of your runs in the maybe like 3/4 of your runs in the Frost Festival. Yeah. It wasn't even entirely in the Frost Festival.
No, it wasn't entirely in the Frost Festival. But I was like, look, this is a time when a lot of people are playing. I'll just play a lot as well. And things kind of opened up on my schedule a little bit at the same time. So let's go for it. And I know a lot of people were going for it as well. I was talking to Hafu during that time, and we kept on updating each other on, it's like, what's your average? Here's my average. How are you doing? And she finished her runs ahead of time. So it was a nice little competition, or just, update, right? Yeah. Motivational updates that we had. I was also keeping track of like Shady's record as well. And mostly it was just to sort of set benchmarks, because Shady and Hafu are going to be very they're going to be really good on the leaderboard. I expect them to be like top 20 on their respective leaderboards on EU and NA. And then I realized that once I got to about like 20 runs and I was at like 9.4, I was like, I had a really good shot, right? Yeah. And by that time, Hafu ended at around like 8.6, I think. And Shady also ended around there. And I was just like, okay, if I kind of, don't completely tank, I should be able to make top 10 comfortably. And
you can never tell if you can make number one just because there's so many like people who are not streamers and who just like play and love the game and are really good. And we also don't know, also the Meow Clan from China joins our leaderboard and always gets some good scores. So it's hard to know exactly where, but I was pretty confident when I heard your score and I heard like everyone else's score. I remember even after the month end, right, when you knew your final score, which was actually 9.27, not 9.23 or whatever Blizzard's saying, because they didn't count your last run that replaced a run, but whatever. Once I heard that, I was like, I'm pretty sure you're like at a minimum top 3, and probably like I thought you had a good chance at number 1. I know you like either didn't believe it or didn't want to believe it, or just wanted to not get your hopes up
about it. Yeah, I mean, look, I did those runs and I was exhausted by the end. I was really tired. Like it was just like work and then come back and I was like, it's also just like the mental drain of like, all right, 2 more. I got to do 2 runs today. You do the 2 runs. You're like, oh God, I did the 2 runs. Now I got to sleep. And then you wake up and you go to work and you come back. You're like, oh, I got to do 3 runs today. I have to do these runs. And it's just like, it's not fun. I play the same stuff over and over again, or like I would draft the same thing. If it's mage, it's control mage. If it's paladin, it's like temple paladin. If it's hunter, I just draft it as aggressively as possible, and that's basically it.
And that was your top class, right? Like surprisingly, because I remember you were complaining to me. You're like, "Oh my God, Blizzard's screwing me over so much. Look at my picks, like for classes." And it was always like warrior, priest, and hunter, or like something like that.
Hunter was always in there when it was bad picks, and at the end of the month, so this is a question I get asked on stream, and Hunter ended up being my best class. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think it was over 6 or 7 runs. I averaged 9.71 with Hunter, which ended up being my highest average. So Hunter, and it's not like the sample size was incredibly small, like 6, 7 runs over 30, that's quite good, right? And it beat Paladin, it beat Mage. I played Rogue the most, and Rogue actually lowered my average, not by too much, but I only averaged like 8.7 with Rogue, which kind of makes sense. Like the more you play a class as well, the lower it kind of becomes. But I found out that okay, so I'm gonna pose another question, and I will answer it myself. It's like, Merps, what did you learn during these runs?
Oh, learning, yes.
Yeah, learning. So I did find, and I guess this was good advice for those going for the leaderboard and finding themselves in a position in which you have a shot at like top 5 or top 10. So this is applicable to many people, obviously. But I actually changed up my play style for like the last 10 runs. When I knew that I had a shot at a very high finish. So what I would do is I would definitely draft to prevent downside. I actually did it because at a certain point, I was also very confident. Like I felt like I knew the meta very well. I knew the meta, I knew the matchups. I was like very sort of in tune with what I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to draft. And internally, I bumped down cards that would lose me the game. Not significantly, but maybe on our tier list by like 10 points, which is significant. But, so cards like Naga Corsair and I would just not draft. I would still draft like Bloodsail Raider because the swing is not as bad, right?
Yeah.
But I would not draft Naga Corsair because if I get my 4-drop eaten by a 2-drop, the game is over. It kind of doesn't matter the slight advantage I would have gotten before then, and it doesn't matter like if I'm winning at that time. They kind of just win the game, right? So I don't draft that. At the same time, when I go with a class that can be aggressive, I just go aggressive. Which on one hand, you can think of it as, wait, but you can low roll and you can like not get there. But I felt that if I went in that direction very strongly, I have curve consistency,
That's
number
true.
one, right? And I have just sort of, there's no way their deck quality beats me, right?
Like you could get screwed by RNG. You can get screwed by like rock, paper, scissors when you match up against those primordial drakes. But They just can't have 3 legendaries and beat your no legendary deck.
Yeah, yes. And then so that's what I changed about my playstyle, because at that point I'm not saying I just want to like preserve, and you definitely have to still take risks. If you don't take risks, your average could severely suffer, right? But I knew that I was like, okay, I understand the meta. Let's not take those sort of cards. And at the end, my average went down a little bit, but I was still keeping it quite high. And I think that was really important, because I did see a lot of those like swing cards being played, and I just needed to make sure, look, if I get an 8-win run, that's fine. I just can't afford a 3 or 4-win run,
right,
which I avoided throughout like my entire 30 runs. And that's really what helped me. And I know that like during Hafu's runs, like there was sort of like a 4-run span where she got like 8 wins, 3 wins, and then like 9 wins.
Right.
And then
that really destroys your average when you're like in like the 8 point whatever, 9 point whatever range.
Yeah. You can't have 3 wins. You can't have 4 wins. One of those runs just means that you're spending the next 4 or 5 runs making up for that.
Yep.
And you can't do that. So I was always saying like, all right, now 7, 8 wins, I'm not happy about, but that's okay. And then I can make it up with like a 10 or 11. I can't take the 3 or 4 win run hit. And thankfully, I also high rolled as well. So thankfully that happened.
So,
but
yeah. So I think it was interesting going back a little bit before your end of month strategy for your last few runs of preventing downside risk is when you're saying like you're not having fun with going for the leaderboards. I thought that was pretty important because so this part of the early part of the story is like when we decided like who was going to do the leaderboard and that Merps was going to do it. He was coming off of like 11, 12, 12, 12, and then like 6 and 9 and then like 10 or something like that. Like heading into the Frost Festival, so he thought it was like a good opportunity to get a pretty high score if he continued it in the Frost Festival. But the whole idea is, I think, and this is like, if you're doing the leaderboard, you can do it for fun and all that. But a lot of it is also just, even if it's not fun, if it works and your goal is to be successful more than it is to be having fun, you're probably going to get better results. Like when your focus is different, because I know a lot of people play to have fun and that's totally fine, right? But like maybe for 1 month on the leaderboard, if you're also really competitive, just like try to purposefully not have fun. Like I think that could like actually improve people's win rates.
You sound like the parent in which no. Here's exactly the situation. It's like chat is basically, the ambitious like the ambitious like art student, right? And you're the parent who is just like Claire. And I don't know why chat is Claire, but
chat. You mean our listeners, our viewers, and listeners?
Yeah. Right. And you're just being like, Claire, honey, sweetie, art is great and all, and you are fantastic. But that's not gonna pay the bills, right? Like you have a great time, and I'm glad that you've gone and explored the world and seen things. But
you played your warriors, you played your priests, but this is not the time.
Yeah, you need to be successful. You need to bring home those checks, right? You need to start thinking of a family. So sometimes you got to give up dreams. I've given up dreams. Okay, look at me, and I don't know whoever you're with. It's not me because I would never. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, it's like look at me, like look at us, right? It's like I've given up so much for you, and now you have to do the same. That's what you are. That's what you're saying, basically.
Oh my god, I'm turning into my parents. But I'm applying it to games, which is probably worse. Like when you really think about it. Okay, so I guess that's. I just found that really interesting because there's always a topic, especially before in the early going, about like are streamers having fun with streaming? And I know like at least me, and I'm pretty sure we have a lot of fun when we're like streaming and like playing games and whatever. But if you're going for the leaderboard, it's like a lot less fun. than like Hearthstone Arena on a stream, even though we always try hard on stream, right? So I know a lot of like thought processes, well, what's the difference between going for the leaderboard while try harding on stream and like doing off stream runs going for the leaderboard? And it's really quite a big difference. Like, I know I have less fun too going for the leaderboard than just streaming, which is also why I don't do it that often. But when you want to do the leaderboard, and it's also because when we do something, when we attempt something, right, we have limited time, we're spread very thin. When we want to do something, we want to do it well, right? Like, it's not worth, this feels like a weird thing to say, but it's not worth my time personally, I think, to get like a top 50 finish on the leaderboard. Like, if I want to be going for it, I want to almost certainly be in the top 20. I want a good shot at the top 10. That's my personal goals that I've set for myself. And so if I'm going to make the game not fun, that's not something I'm going to be doing. So I'm glad that after you have made the last 2 weeks of the month of July very not fun for you, that you were able to pull off number one, and you can you could take that to the end of your Hearthstone career, right? Like, no one's going to take that away from you.
Yep.
And that puts a lot of pressure on me because I'm probably going for it either in September or October, and probably not going to get number one. But I was hoping to be competitive. I was like, Merps will get like 6 or 7, and then I'll try to improve my standing, because until now I had a higher standing by two.
And you reminded me of it quite often.
I did. I was like, who's number 11 and who's number 9, huh? Okay. So that's our podcast. It's our first KFT podcast, and we spent like a third of the time talking about KFT. It's been a really long week and weeks before that. There's so much stuff to talk about. We could go on for a 3-hour podcast, but we are not. We are going to do the Arena Coup after this, which is with Shaman, obviously the best class in KFT, right?
Yeah. And a class that we are very proficient at.
Yeah, having played a grand total combine of 0 Shaman runs and at least one of every other class. We are going to do our first Shaman run in KFT after this. So if you're watching on Twitch, tune in. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click the Arena Coup link, and it'll be our latest Arena Coup. Other than that, I just really hope Blizzard does something about the synergy meta. Massive outpouring of negative feedback on this, and if Blizzard stays consistent with their philosophy, which is whenever people complain really loudly, they do something about it, even if the way they're doing it is very like patchy. Think about the vicious fledgling thing, then hopefully something gets done, and hopefully this gets picked up, because as someone with countless numbers of runs in the arena, and doing this from an algorithmic perspective as well as a player perspective, it's the synergy meta doesn't work the way Blizzard's implemented it until they get it like reasonably right. It doesn't have to be 100%, but you got to get at least like 75-80% of the way there. It shouldn't be on the live servers. They need to just roll back this change, go back to the drawing board, figure something out, test it better, actually get like, I don't know, talk to people and actually get their opinions on the actual thing they're doing, not just like maybe like broad picture stuff. Because I could see if they floated the idea by people and it was like, oh, how's synergy? Everyone would be like, maybe, pretty good, or like, yeah, that could be a decent idea. But then you get into the specifics of, okay, what if for the first 2 picks we only offer you this pool of 10 cards? Every Arena player would be like, that is stupid. That is so bad. Why would you do that? Like, do you know your game? But they didn't do that second part if they did the first part at all. And I think they need to rethink their process of how these changes come out to the arena. And until then, just pull this change back. KFT's fine. I'm having a lot of fun with the KFT cards. All right? They're very high skilled. Put all the KFT cards that are supposed to be in the arena. If you don't want it to be a 100% bonus, pick another number and just tell us, right? Like, I don't really care if it's a 50% bonus. I don't care if it's no bonus, although there should probably be some kind of bonus. But we just need to know what the number is, because that's part of the rules of the drafting game. And it's kind of key in how to make a good draft. And it's also key in what to expect your opponents to have. It's really what a lot of the skill in Arena is. And instead of having people guess at it, just telling us will be much better. Anyway, I have faith that Blizzard will fix this mess in the relative near future the way they did with Karazhan. And I think until then we're kind of in a waiting pattern while we get some experience with the new KFT cards, which is really what we're excited about and what the focus of Arena should be about right now.
Yeah.
Any final words?
No. This has been a very busy week, right? I don't know. It feels as though the expansion has been out for longer than it has been. I can't, man. I can't remember sort of a release of an expansion that was so not like in which the news has so not been about the expansion itself.
Yeah, right.
It's very strange. So look, I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about next week as well. And if we don't, that just means nothing has happened. So we'll talk about that.
Well, if nothing has happened, we're going to dig in on this weird synergy KFT meta where they're just forcing you to have bad decks. It's weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on that note, signing out. Until next time, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. See you guys next week.
All right. That's it for the